everyone, welcome to the JW Review. My name is Mike Felker, and this is the podcast where we are usually reviewing Watchtower study articles and comparing them to what the scriptures teach. This week we are looking at study article number 22 from the May 2022 Watchtower Study Edition. And the last couple of weeks, if you've been tracking along with us here, we've been looking at the book of Revelation with a lot of theology, some pretty heavy stuff, so definitely go check those out if you haven't already. And this week we're going to be looking at something a little more on the practical side and not quite as theological, although we are going to be looking at the scriptures as always, because that is what we do here. And the title of the article is Wisdom to Guide Our Lives. And I hope the sound quality is good. I'm actually, if you can tell, if you're watching this, I'm recording this from my car. Didn't have a lot of other time to do this week, and I've not tried this with this microphone. So hopefully everything sounds okay. So let's go ahead and dig into this. The key text here is Proverbs 2:6. Which says, "For Yahweh gives wisdom, from his mouth comes knowledge and discernment." This whole article is primarily, at least the parts that I highlighted, about finding balance in your life. And we'll see what kind of balance the Watchtower is talking about here in a little bit, and applying wisdom to those particular situations. So definitely a topic worthy of discussion, although I feel like this topic has been nearly exhausted in the Watchtower literature, and you'll see what I mean here in a second. But let's just read paragraph 1 to get some context here. "If you have ever had to make an important decision, no doubt you prayed for wisdom, and for good reason. King Solomon wrote, 'Wisdom is the most important thing.'" And I say here, read Proverbs 4:7, so let's do that. It says, "The beginning of wisdom is acquire wisdom, and with all your acquiring, acquire understanding." So my Bible says the beginning of wisdom is this. So they say wisdom is the most important thing in the New World Translation. I'm not sure why they state it the way they do, maybe just to be different, like they usually seem to do, instead of going with what most other translations probably say. But that's just something I'll say in passing. I'm not going to make a big point out of that. They continue, "Of course, Solomon was not talking about just any sort of wisdom." Excuse me. He was referring to the wisdom that comes from Jehovah God. But can godly wisdom help us deal with the kind of problems we face today? Yes, it can, as we will see in this article. So what I'm gathering here is that the problems that we face today are going to deal with finding balance in your life, especially as it relates to work, your family, spiritual activities, and things like that. All right, so let's go down to paragraph 4. "Solomon was fabulously wealthy, and he lived in luxury. Jesus, on the other hand, had few possessions and no permanent home. Yet, both men had a balanced view of material things because their wisdom came from the same source, Jehovah God." This paragraph is really interesting to me. You have two types of people. You have one that is extremely wealthy, or fabulously wealthy. Interesting choice of words. I don't know if I've heard Watchtower use the word fabulously before. That's interesting. But fabulously wealthy, someone living in luxury, and then someone else, namely Jesus, who didn't even have a permanent home. Jesus said he didn't even have a place to lay his head. What I've found, at least in the few years that I've been reviewing these Watchtower articles, is that you'll find the Watchtower kind of bringing in sort of testimonies. And we're going to see one here in a little bit. Testimonies from Jehovah's Witnesses talking about their life and how their life relates to work and money and things like that. But what you always see is the examples of people who simplified their life, people who had very little, but intentionally so. They intentionally simplified their lives, intentionally had less, all right, all for the sake of spiritual activities or kingdom work, basically serving serving the Jehovah's Witness organization. That could be moving to Bethel. That could be being a traveling pioneer and spending as much time as possible out in the preaching work and doing that sort of thing, and simplifying your life so that you can do that. And so you hear about people becoming like window washers or things like that. Just really simple work, or just work that allows you to be more flexible with your schedule, so you can do those types of activities. But you're not going to be making as much money, of course. Now, what I don't think I have ever seen, and if you know of examples, please share with me. I'm all ears. But do you ever hear about a Jehovah's Witness who was fabulously wealthy, living in luxury, and someone sharing their story and how maybe they were using their wealth for Jehovah's service, or whatever wording they were using, or at least you find the Watchtower talking about someone who is super wealthy, but saying it in a positive light. Because what I find is that you almost never, or maybe never ever, see the Watchtower talking about wealthy Jehovah's Witnesses in a positive light. Now, the Jehovah's Witnesses pretty much, or the Watchtower, has to talk about Solomon and his wealth in a positive light, because the Bible talks about Solomon and his wealth in a positive light, about all of the things that he accomplished in his great wealth. And Solomon had wisdom too, right? So he had great wealth, great wisdom. Of course, later on in his life, Solomon got himself in trouble, with all of his pagan wives that he found, and so he strayed away from his relationship with God. But nonetheless, prior to that, I don't think you can find any negative statement in the Bible about Solomon's great wealth. Money is a neutral thing. It's just whatever you do with it can be good, or it can be not good, right? But with Solomon, no problem with what he did. In paragraph 5, Watchtower says, Solomon acknowledged that money is a protection. With money, we are able to obtain life's necessities and perhaps a few wants. That's interesting. You're able to obtain life's necessities and perhaps a few wants. Now, that's a very intentional set of wording that the Watchtower is using here. Is perhaps a few wants, not many wants. And the thing is, wants are not a sinful thing. To want a big house is not a sinful thing. To want a nice car is not a sinful thing. Those are in and of themselves neutral objects. Of course, there can be sinful pride involved, no doubt about it. But those things in and of themselves are not so. Why are they stating it this way? With money, you're able to obtain life's necessities and perhaps a few wants. Now, I think what's behind this, what they're trying to get you to think about, is that instead of doing what Solomon did, which the Bible does not call sinful, by the way, getting fabulously wealthy, the Bible does not say that's sinful. Remember, we're taking what the Watchtower says and trying to find scriptures to support it or to deny it. So yeah, you are able to to obtain life's necessities and perhaps a few wants, but is it wrong to want more than that? Is it wrong to want more than just simply the necessities? Does the Bible require what the Watchtower is saying here? Now, they cite here Ecclesiastes 7:12. Let's take a look at that. This is Solomon. It says, "For wisdom is a shadow of protection as money is a shadow of protection. And the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the lives of its masters." So this is just saying something that money can do, just as what wisdom can do. So money is not merely a protection, just as wisdom is not merely a protection. So with wisdom, you can actually search for more and more of it. Now, maybe at a minimum, it could be a protection, just as money at a minimum can be protection. But just like with wisdom, there's nothing wrong with wanting more of the money, right? There's nothing wrong with that, wanting more money. Nothing inherently wrong at all. Just as there's nothing wrong with wanting more wisdom. And you may not think of it this way, but there could be potential dangers with either. And what we see from the Watchtower is, in my opinion, an unbalanced stressing of the not wanting to pursue wealth or wanting more money. You almost always see that in Watchtower literature, and the encouragement on the other side to do less with money, to live a more simplified life, because of spiritual interests, whatever those may be, because you're working too many hours, and so you need to work less hours so you can have more kingdom activities or spiritual activities, so on and so forth. The same can be true of wisdom, and you may not think of it this way, but you can actually get more wisdom, but you can become prideful because of your wisdom, right? That can happen. You can inherit a lot of wisdom and gain a lot of wisdom through various methods, and you can actually become very prideful and become very arrogant because of the wisdom that you have accumulated. So there's really warnings for both, right? But I think the Watchtower has an unbalanced stressing of those who want more money. Continuing on, Solomon also observed that people who love money are seldom happy with what they have. Now that's right. We're not supposed to love money, especially not in such a way that would detract us from our love of God. And what would the love of money be? I think the love of money would be to be counting on your money in the wrong kind of way. Thinking that money is just, for example, that money will just bring you happiness. That if you just get that money that you want, you're going to be happy. You're finding your happiness in all the wrong places. And that can be a whole host of things besides money. So yeah, that's right. If you love money in that way, you're not going to be happy, right? What the Watchtower is going to quote here, like, seek the kingdom first, and you'll be fulfilled. He warned against putting all our trust in money, since whatever money we have can quickly disappear. Well, of course, you don't want to put all your trust in money, and this is what I find to be a bit discouraging when you are having conversations with or hearing about Jehovah's Witnesses. There's always this, be careful about not putting all your trust in money, when you just talked about kind of wanting more money for various reasons, non-sinful reasons. Maybe you want more money so that you can take care of your parents when they are elderly and they need your help. Or maybe you want money so you can take care of your kids and leave them with an inheritance. Maybe you want to save money and invest in your children's education should they decide to go to college. Maybe you want to living in these hard economic times, you want to have more money so you can save more money and just live responsibly, or have more money so that you can invest it into a 401k or a mutual fund or something like that. Wanting those things is not wrong, it's not sinful, and it's not putting all of your trust in money, because yeah, everything can disappear, right? Because if you do put all your trust in money and your money disappears, what are you left with? Well, all your hopes and dreams are all shattered. Okay? But this is where I start to see the Watchtower's imbalance as they talk about these things. In paragraph 6, they say, but Jesus did not allow material things to become the focus of his life. Well, yeah, of course not. The focus of your life really should be God and pleasing him, and basically obeying the two greatest commandments. But even though Solomon was very wealthy, was material things the focus of Solomon's life? No, even though he was fabulously wealthy, it wasn't the focus of his life. They quote here from Jesus, you cannot slave for God and for riches, right? And then Jesus taught if we seek the kingdom first, Jehovah will make sure that we have what we need. Yes, indeed, Jehovah will make sure that you have what you need if you seek the kingdom first. But what is the mentality there? The mentality there is that if you seek the kingdom first, no matter what else happens in your life, if that all falls apart, that's okay because you're seeking the kingdom first. I think that's really the principle here. It says nothing about whether you should get a really good education, whether you should work long and hard hours. It doesn't say anything about that, because all the while doing those things, whether it's getting advanced degrees or working long hours, you can seek the kingdom first while doing those things. But what you simply find in so many of these testimonies that we will see is this simplifying of your life, working less hours, not taking on that extra degree or whatever it might be. Doing those things, you have more time for spiritual activities. Translation, more time for Watchtower activities. Because that's what this all boils down to, is doing more Watchtower activities, doing more and more for the organization. Paragraph 7. Many of our brothers and sisters have benefited from applying divine wisdom when it comes to money. So here's our example. Here's our testimony. Consider the example of a single brother named Daniel. He says, in my teenage years, I decided I would make spiritual activities the most important thing in my life. Okay, making spiritual activities the most important thing in his life. Translation, making Watchtower activities the most important thing in your life. Alright, because there's only one way. It's the Watchtower way. You can't go off and do your own thing in your own spiritual activities. No, you've got to be serving the Watchtower. Those are really the only kind of spiritual activities. Those are the only ones that really count. If you don't believe me, try this on for size. Let's say you want to start using as much time as possible going to serve at crisis pregnancy centers and helping as many people as possible, and that being your spiritual activities. And that means maybe spending less time doing Watchtower activities. Try that on for size. I'd be really curious how that would work out. Something like that. It could be anything else. It could be serving the homeless. Things that aren't traditionally known as Jehovah's Witness type of activities. Share with me what you think about that. I've never been a Jehovah's Witness, but many in my audience have or are currently. How would that work? All right, we continue. Because he kept his life simple, Daniel has been able to use his time and skills on many theocratic projects. Yeah, so they're only commending him because they're theocratic projects. Other things wouldn't be approved or commended, so it seems. He adds, I can honestly say that I've never regretted the path I chose. Sure, I could have earned a lot of money if I had made that the most important thing in my life. Hold on a second. Why is this person equating with earning a lot of money with it being the most important thing in your life? Solomon was extremely wealthy, probably one of the most wealthy people of his day. All right, and one of the most wisest people of his day too. But was earning those things the most important things in Solomon's life? And see, this is where I see the imbalance. I could have earned a lot of money if I had made that the most important thing in my life. Why does it need to be that way? Why does it need to be that way? Can't you earn a lot of money while also seeking the kingdom first? Why not? Sure, you can warn about that and say that, yeah, you may get temptations, but that's not the case for everybody. I know a lot of very wealthy people who are extraordinarily generous. Some of the most generous people I know are the more wealthy people. They really are. They really are. But how could money replace the friendships I've cultivated? How could it replace the satisfaction I have from knowing that I'm putting the kingdom first? So notice what he's saying. By not earning a lot of money, he's putting the kingdom first. You see what they're doing here? There's no amount of money that could equal the blessings Jehovah has given me. Clearly, we benefit when we focus not on money, but on spiritual things. They paint this picture of an either-or thing, that if you're trying to earn a lot of money, you're focusing on money, right? You're making money the most important thing in your life. Why can't it be both? Focusing on money. What do you mean by focusing on money? In what sense? Focusing on money is not wrong. Now, making money the most important thing in your life is certainly wrong, because, as Jesus said, the kingdom should be first priority in your life. Yes, granted. But focusing on money, what is wrong with that? Solomon could not have been as wealthy as he was if he didn't have focus on money. That doesn't come... Making as much money as Solomon did, or whoever you can think of in our day, that requires some major focus and attention to get to that place, but it doesn't mean that in doing so, you are not putting kingdom interests first. It doesn't mean that. So we don't have to have this either-or sort of dichotomy, but Watchtower wants to paint this picture. They want you to simplify your life so that you have more room for theocratic activities, serving them. That is what they want you to do. Paragraph 8. Solomon called the enjoyment that we can derive from our hard work the gift of God. Notice this. Okay, this is so interesting. Let's cite here Ecclesiastes 5:18 and 19. So let's check that out. Here's what I've seen to be good, which is beautiful, to eat, to drink, and to see good in all one's labor in which he labors under the sun during the few days of his life which God has given him, for this is his portion. Furthermore, as for every man to whom God has given riches and wealth, he has also empowered him to eat from them and to take up his portion and to be glad in his labor. This is the gift of God. This is so interesting that this text is cited after that example about this guy who has simplified his life. They're not trying to focus on money, but this text in Ecclesiastes, this is coming from Solomon, someone who probably spent a lot of his time, a great deal of time, accumulating wealth and riches. He did. I mean, he couldn't be what he was without that. And look at what Watchtower says. He wrote, there is benefit in every kind of hard work. Does that mean working long hours? It may be. Now, I'm not saying you have to work long hours. That's between you and God, and that's between your conscience. And you've got to look at how you are balancing those things, and how whether you're the kind of person that would be tempted to grow a love for money in the wrong kind of way. Yes, right. But it doesn't say that you can't work long hours, even if that detracts from so-called theocratic activities, which are specifically Watchtower Jehovah's Witness activities. Doing things their way and only their way. Solomon knew what he was talking about. He was a worker. He built houses, planted vineyards, and made gardens and pools. He also built cities. That was hard work, and no doubt it gave him a measure of satisfaction. But Solomon did not rely on those activities alone to bring him happiness. He also engaged in spiritual pursuits. I agree wholeheartedly with what they're saying here about Solomon. And this is something that the Watchtower couldn't avoid. This is in the same Bibles that we all read. So yeah, they're reading the same Bible as we are now. Generally speaking, but what I mean is their Bible is going to talk about Solomon. It's going to talk about Solomon's riches. That is just unavoidable, right? You can't skirt around that. So they're talking about Solomon and all these things in a positive light. But what I said at the beginning is, where do you find examples about the Watchtower talking about Jehovah's Witnesses who are very rich in the same positive light that they talk about Solomon? Where are the examples? I genuinely would love to see it. I've not seen it. Maybe it's there, but I've not seen it. Can they show me an example of a Jehovah's Witness who was extremely wealthy and used his or her wealth for the same kind of pursuits that Solomon used his wealth for? Building cities, doing just amazing things. And look at what they say here. He got a measure of satisfaction. He was satisfied with work that he didn't have to do. Solomon didn't have to do all those things, building cities and houses and vineyards. He didn't have to do those things. He wanted to do those things. He wanted to, and there was nothing wrong with it. But where do you find Watchtower or Jehovah's Witnesses in general commending people for accomplishing these great feats? I don't think I've seen it. After sharing in all sorts of activities, both secular and spiritual, Solomon realized that spiritual activities are far more important than secular pursuits. Well, yeah. They are more important because you're supposed to be seeking the kingdom first. So yeah, no argument there. In paragraph 10, they say, godly wisdom helps us to have a balanced view of our secular work. As Christians, we are taught to do hard work, good work. Yes and amen. But what you find so often are all of these examples where Jehovah's Witnesses, they were working so many hours that they didn't have time for theocratic activities. You see those examples over and over again. Employers often notice our honesty and our industriousness, and they may tell us how much they value our work ethic. With the best of motives, we could begin to work long hours, hoping to give our employer an even more favorable impression of what? Jehovah's Witnesses. Not a favorable impression of Jesus Christ, but a favorable impression of Jehovah's Witnesses. Does that sound boastful to you? That you're working for someone, hoping that they'll have a favorable impression of men? Because what I hope for me is that my employer sees the work that I'm doing, and if he notices that, I would hope that I would give all the glory to Jesus Christ. I don't want the focus on me, right? Because I'm a fallible, sinful man. I can mess up. No, I want Jesus Christ to be glorified through the work that I do. I am nothing. I can only do what I do that's good anyway because of Jesus Christ. He's the one I serve. I'm his witness. Right? I'm a Christian. I'm a witness of Jesus Christ. I don't want men to be recognized and glorified. I want Jesus Christ to be recognized and glorified. Soon, though, we might realize that we are starting to neglect our family responsibilities and theocratic activities. See, this is just what always seems to happen. Working long hours just seems to always inherently be a bad thing. Solomon probably worked a lot of very long hours, but in doing so, was he neglecting his family? And was he neglecting theocratic activities? Not to my knowledge, not until he strayed away, but it was before he strayed away that he had this great, amazing wealth and did all these amazing things. What they're trying to do here is implant this idea in your mind that if you're working long hours, working really hard, getting a higher education, whatever it may be, all those things, they want you to think that in doing that, you are automatically neglecting theocratic activity. So they want your service. They want you working for them. They want you working for them. Let's skip down to just a couple of things I wanted to go over, but I really need to wrap this up. Look what they say in paragraph 14. We would never want to call into question Jehovah's judgment by concluding that we are unworthy of being his worshipers and receiving life in his new world. Notice what the Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians 15:9. Paul says, "For I am the least of the apostles, and not worthy to even be called an apostle because I persecuted the church of God." Look at what he says in verse 10. "But by the grace of God I am what I am, and his grace toward me did not prove vain, but I labored even more than all of them, yet not I, but the grace of God with me." So the fact of the matter is, I'm not worthy, and you're not worthy of being a worshiper of God or getting eternal life. No more than Paul was not worthy. It's only by God's grace that I can do anything. I'm not worthy. And that's the beautiful thing about the gospel is you aren't worthy, and really you can't be worthy. Except through the blood and imputed righteousness of Christ in your life. Jesus becoming sin in your behalf in his death for you. Which means Jesus became the punishment that you deserve. He bore that punishment. And then he also imputed his righteousness to you. So that when God looks at you, he sees Christ's righteousness. That's all grace. That's not deserving. None of us deserve that. And we're not even worthy of that. We're not. Even Paul, the great apostle. Look at what his words were. Paragraph 15. Some 15 years ago, the Watchtower recommended that we develop this balanced view of ourselves. Certainly, we would not want to think too highly of ourselves to the point of becoming conceited. Nor would we want to go to the other extreme and think nothing of ourselves. Rather, our aim should be to cultivate a reasonable view of ourselves, one that takes into consideration our strengths as well as our limitations. A Christian woman put it this way: "I am not the epitome of evil, nor am I God's gift to others." Let's look at a couple of texts here in light of what was just said. Galatians 2:20. "I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself up for me." What does that say about thinking something of yourselves? Look at 2 Corinthians 11:30. If I have to boast, I will boast of what pertains to my weaknesses. Interesting. Boasting about weaknesses. Look at what he says in 2 Corinthians 12, 5 through 9. On behalf of such man, I will boast, but on my own behalf, I will not boast except in weaknesses. For if I do wish to boast, I will not be foolish, for I will be speaking the truth. But I refrain from this, so that no one will consider me beyond what he sees in me or hears from me. Boasting in your weaknesses. So what is the Watchtower trying to say here in light of the scriptures that I just read? So you don't want to think too highly of yourselves. You don't want to be conceited. Now, think about the governing body. Oh, does the governing body think highly of themselves? Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Now, thinking nothing of yourself. So, what you should think about yourselves, what I think is a healthy and balanced way to think of yourselves, is that you can be much, but only through Christ who strengthens you. So don't ever talk highly of yourselves without exalting Christ in what he does in your life, because without Christ you are nothing. That doesn't exalt you in any way, because you're nothing without Christ. But saying that it's Christ who lives in you, who accomplishes these things in you, you get none of the credit for that. It's all Jesus Christ. So there's nothing to boast about in and of yourself. There's nothing in yourself. Without Christ, you are nothing. You are nothing. Okay, we'll wrap it up there. What did you think about all this? I'd love to hear your comments. Was I off on any of this? Did I present a balanced view? What do you think about the Watchtower view? Are they balanced? I don't have any experience being a Jehovah's Witness, but I know so many of you do. So tell me your thoughts and your experiences about how you are told to live a balanced life in the Jehovah's Witness organization in light of everything that was said here. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave those in the comments below. If you're on YouTube, you can also send me a private message if you want to share your comments with me privately. That is perfectly fine to do too. If you do want to support this ministry, a couple of great ways for you to do that. The best way for you to do that is if you're watching this on YouTube, hit that thumbs up icon, the like button, so that the algorithms will help get this video recognized. Please also consider subscribing to this and hitting the notification bell. That way you can be notified every time I release a new video. If you're listening to this, or you'd prefer to listen to this, you can do so on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you would, please go to Apple Podcasts and rate and review this podcast. That also does help the algorithm, so people can actually recognize this when they're searching for this kind of material. And lastly, if you do want to support this work financially, you can become a monthly supporter on Patreon by giving a monthly donation of, I think, $5 through $20. Every little bit helps, and it helps to keep the lights on. It helps to support the different server expenses that are happening. So regardless, however you support this work, thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate you all. Thank you all for your encouragement. Hope this review was helpful. Have a great week. We will hopefully see you next week.
For more information about Jehovah's Witnesses and other topics, please visit michaeljfelker.com. There you can also reach me directly to submit questions or comments to be covered on the JW Review. To subscribe to this podcast, please go to iTunes and search for the JW Review.